Hey, little Melg.
Hey, Shock. I've been trying to reach you all day, man.
I've been busy on the dating app.
Dating app? Which one?
Oh, just Valorant.
Huh. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to call you about the show. Have you seen the news? League around the world is dying, Valorant's taking over, the cinematics sucked, and the LCO doesn't even know when it's starting or who's playing in it. Like, I don't know, man. It might be time to call it quits.
I knew this day would come. Hey everyone, and welcome to our special pre-season episode of the Matchfix. I'm Shock, the mayor of Mid, the lecturer of lanes, and I'm joined by the brother of Bard and ARAM tryhard, Amelg.
I'm a Melg, but you are my favorite viewer.
Amelg, unfortunately, has been called away on some personal business, but he's still able to be here on our screen. So, Amelg, what do you have for me?
Well, I think the biggest topic on the agenda before we start the season off is, of course, the big, I don't know, could you call it drama around the whole LCO format change? Yeah, I mean, Riot's, taking one step at a time, trying to kill our region.
Trying.
But essentially, before, obviously our top 10 from each split would go to MSI and Worlds play-ins, and then we'd lose all our games and then come back. But a bit after Worlds 2022, we got told that the PCS would essentially eat up the LCO and would be included somehow in their playoffs bracket. So instead of sending one team directly to MSI and Worlds, we're instead sending the top two teams from each split into the PCS playoffs, where we essentially compete for their PCS spots. So that's like one MSI spot, and I think they have two World spots as well. Potentially this means that we could see two OC teams at Worlds, but probably not, to be honest. There's also a bit of, I guess, there's a few question marks about what top two teams means, whether that's like the top two teams from the regular season or from playoffs. So yeah, a lot of gray areas for now, but definitely some interesting changes.
Yeah, I feel like the official Riot, what do you call it, like document or post or whatever that they made was pretty vague. Like you said, it's not really clear if it's just the top two teams from the regular season or if we're going to play like an LCO playoffs completely and like have a winner and then send the top two to the playoffs, or are we going to play the playoffs up to the top two and then like finish our playoffs in the PCS? Honestly, have no idea. And from what I've heard, no one seems to know, right? It could be anything at this point. So yeah, it's a bit how you're going, as they might say.
Been like a lot of whispers for sure, but it does seem like no one is really 100% certain about what it's going to look like. And like we're recording this like pretty much like a bit under a week from the supposed start of the split, which they haven't announced properly yet, by the way. So yeah, really, I mean, I'm curious to see how it turns out. I feel like it's gonna be very messy.
Do you think, by the way, that Riot would have still done this if we had like done well at MSI and Worlds?
I don't think so. I think they would have been a lot more scared to, because they probably would have faced more backlash. They kind of rubbed salt in the wound, right? They're kicking us while we're down. It's just like, okay, you didn't get any wins this year. Say goodbye. One more and we might kill your region.
I feel like it might have been on the cards for a while, right? And they've just been waiting for an excuse to do it. Maybe PGG and MSI kind of, bought us a little bit of extra time. But yeah, unfortunately, 2022 was not our best year. But I think there's like maybe some pros and cons about it. So the one good thing is that if you do manage to get to Worlds through the PCS, chances are you're a pretty good team. Like you're probably going to do well at Worlds, because I think it's fair to say that PCS is, as a whole, a stronger region than OC. So yeah, it definitely gives you like a lot of practice and a lot of different teams to play against on the way up. So yeah, I don't know. There's a bit of a silver lining to it. I still think that not having a guaranteed World spot though is kind of bad, because obviously, even if the team that goes to Worlds or MSI or whatever does bad, they still bring back quite a lot of experience, right? Of scrimming against tons of different international teams, obviously just like playing on the world or on an international stage. And now they potentially don't get that. But yeah, could we see two teams at Worlds? Maybe. I feel like it's kind of unlikely though.
There's a very real chance that we don't actually have a presence at MSI or at Worlds. Feels like one more step and we are just, poof, gone. I mean, there are still some pros. I do think that potentially we can get more sort of best of fives in their playoffs against like maybe more evenly matched teams, you might be able to argue. And there's also like more incentive, I guess, for scrim opportunities like we've seen with PGG. I think they said in a recent article that they were, because they're based in Perth, so they were planning on scrimming against PCS teams and LCO teams. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out as well.
Another change as well was the residency changes. So I believe the way it works is if you're an OC or a PCS resident, like that's just the same thing now. So PCS players can play in OC, OC players can play in PCS. And I didn't realize that was the case at first. I thought OC players could play in PCS, but not the other way around. And that's something we're going to get to later because one of the rosters actually has a few PCS players on it. But hey, no spoilers. But the other change was that they made it so if you're an OC player, you have to choose between your NA residency and your OC residency. But you could only choose NA residency if you'd already played in NA, which I think was, one, sort of unfair, but two, they had to do it because, like, okay, it's unfair because a lot of players now that'll probably go to or would have gone to NA in a couple years will just never be NA residents, right? And that's like it's a pretty sizable advantage, right? If you have that compared to not having it. But at the same time, if they'd made it so everyone could choose to be an NA resident, the problem is we wouldn't be able to field teams anymore because so many players would choose NA resident and then you can only have 2 imports on a team. So I don't know, it just wouldn't work. So I'm not really sure what Riot's meant to do about that. I don't think there is really anything that can be done about it, but it does suck for kind of up and coming players that were hoping to go to NA because that's kind of I think the end goal for a lot of players' careers going through OC. Like that's the pathway. So yeah, unfortunate to lose that. On the other hand, at least the PCS opens up as a pathway as well.
All the PCS teams, I assume, are not English speaking. So I feel like it'd be pretty difficult to get on one of their teams unless you can speak Chinese.
Well, if there are any players that don't want to play in OC anymore, they can come play in the Matchfix Pro League, which will be hosted somewhere out in the Pacific, I guess, on a cruise ship.
Just in the ocean.
I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Let's
Prize
do it.
pool of 3 mouse pads.
And milk points.
Milk points. Oh no, not those. Those aren't real, man. The next thing we have to talk about is there's been a lot of rooster changes. In fact, there was even 2 teams that left the league, which were Gravitas and Order, and they've been replaced by BLISS and Ground Zero. And the roster changes are pretty exciting. So let's go through them alphabetical order, starting off with BLISS. Amelg, what's the roster?
Well, you got Lived in the top lane. Why not? To everyone's dismay in the jungle. Daystar in the mid lane, who is a Korean import, I think from the Challenger League potentially. Don't quote me on that. And then you got Lemus and Benvi in the bottom lane, with Beats as a support as well, or as a sub support. Sorry.
Okay, so what do you feel about the roster? Because when I'm looking at it, it kind of seems middle of the pack, you know, like it has potential for a top team, but also it doesn't have some of the at least kind of known talent. You know, it doesn't have those heavy hitters that have been on championship teams before. I do think Daystar is pretty good. I've played against him in solo queue maybe like 2 or 3 times, and I think he's probably going to be the second best mid laner, is what I'd guess. So he's probably going to be a pretty big part of their team.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. It's difficult for me to see this team being in the top 3, and I don't think they'd be in the bottom 3 as well. So yeah, definitely like very much middle of the pack, right? One thing to point out is that, you know, seeing Why Not on a roster and he's not on the bench kind of grinds my gears a little bit. You know, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out because I don't think many, I guess, like quote unquote rookie junglers have the opportunity to play with an import like in their first proper split. And hopefully Daystar doesn't turn out to be another
Eminez.
Eminez, yeah.
I mean, he was really, really good, even if he was a psycho.
Yeah, it's like a balance, right? You got to find a balance between being good and being a psychopath.
Yeah, I think BLISS,
that's League of Legends.
Overall, I would think that they will play mainly through their mid jungle. And I think that's actually one thing that is going to be quite good about them because I think Daystar has a really good champion pool. Like I don't know if you guys have looked at his OPGG, but he's played like 100 games on like 60 different champs. You know, it's like he's got a bunch of champs in that list with like 1 or 2 games, and he's got like good win rates overall. So he's obviously proficient on a bunch of champions. And I think that's actually going to be really good with Why Not because, you know, say what you want about Why Not's gameplay, but he does like doing kind of creative things, right? He likes picking stuff that might be off meta, but really good in the situation. He strikes me as the kind of guy who looks for advantages in draft, stuff like that. So I think a lot of Why Not, you know, maybe being able to play some of the weird picks could combo with Daystar's champion pool. So that's where I would look for BLISS. Also, yeah, I feel like the rest of them, I'm just like not too sure. I think lived in, what year was that? I guess 2021 form was pretty strong.
Yeah.
But like last year, I don't think he did that well. Obviously, he was on a sort of weaker team. And the bot lane, I think the bot lane is still kind of question marks for me. I don't think the bot lane has ever really had a chance to shine. BLISS overall, middle of the pack, potentially can go up.
All right, next up on the chopping block is going to be the Chiefs, the reigning champions, obviously. We've got BioPanther in the top lane, Babbitt making a return from coaching into the jungle, Kisei in mid, and then Raze and Eladoric in the bot lane. And then they've also got some subs in Tien and Cupcake, I think. I'm not sure if they're subs or coaches or both. And they've also got Kuden back as a coach as well, whose name changed to Mirren, I think.
Focus and retrospection.
Pretty much Chiefs. That's very Chiefs.
They've definitely, well, obviously they're keeping some players from last year. I think some of the roster swaps, are just kind of because of, well, just of things that have happened, right? Like I think Topun going to BioPanther kind of makes sense. I think Bio played a lot better than Topun did last year. Arthur to Babib. So Arthur's playing for Team Liquid Academy. So that kind of makes sense. Babib was a coach for the team the whole year. So, why not just slot him in? Tally, I believe, has retired. I think he plays WoW a lot now. I actually looked, I don't know if you've seen this, but on Skimmy's YouTube, he's like doing Mythic Plus on WoW. And I looked on one of his videos and Tally was in his group. So I guess they push keys together. That probably doesn't mean that much to you. But anyway, he's still reasonably hardcore somewhere else. They've replaced him with Kisei, who is probably, I think off the top of my head, the best performing mid of last year. Although to be honest, I can't even remember who the other mids are. So Kisei, the fact that I remember you means you probably did pretty well. And bot lane, Raze and Eldaric, once again, I think that's it was the strongest bot lane last year. Yeah. It's probably going to be the strongest bot lane this year too. They do have Tien top sub and Cupcake as support sub. Again, like you said, it's not super clear what their roles are, but I think probably Cupcake will just be, at least when he was a sub for us and Direwolves, he was kind of, coming into scrims sometimes, watching, sometimes playing. Gives a lot of good advice. I think he's a pretty good coach. And obviously, he's kind of a support coach now, sort of the role he's moved into. Tien is an interesting one because I think the reason Tien is picked up is for, or at least historically, when Tien and Swiper were on the team on I guess it was Chiefs together. It was so Tien could play carries basically, and Swiper could, play the tanks. And that's kind of the same vibe I get from Bio and Tien. But I think Bio is a lot better than Tien, so I'm not too sure when I would play Tien over BioPanther. But I guess it's nice to have flexibility, right? And also it is nice to have someone to practice against in 1v1. I think that's kind of underrated because it allows you to practice matchups within your team. You don't have to go to a member of another team to figure that out. So that's a nice bonus. And yeah, again, it's very Chiefs-like. They're always a team that has a lot of resources. They're going to have the gaming house, the coaching staff they want, subs that they need, all that sort of stuff. Next on our list is Direwolves. So the Direwolves roster now is Zoranus, Poltron, Chaz, Praetor, and Decoy. So Zoranus, Poltron were there last year, but they have replaced their entire bot side of the map. So I think it was Suman going to Chaz. I think that's potentially an upgrade. The only reason I say potentially is because Chaz hasn't played an OC for a while. He's been in EU, so it's kind of hard to know what his current skill level is. And I didn't personally watch any of the European, what do you call it, ERLs or anything. So I don't really know much about his skill level at the moment. I think it's a pretty decent bet that Chaz is in the top 4 of mid laners, but again, I don't think you can say for sure. Praetor and Decoy, again, I think Decoy is very dependent on the meta. I think Decoy on range supports is significantly better than on melee supports, and I think that's one big difference between Decoy and Eladoric. I think Eladoric tends towards the melees. I think Decoy is better at the range. So for that bot lane, I think it does depend quite a bit on the meta. I think Praetor as well is a bit kind of restricted in the champion pool. I feel like he really likes to scaling crit 80 carries. I guess Jinx, Draven, Xayah, those sort of champs. I guess Draven is sort of a scaling champ now just because he hits his 6 items really early in the game. But when I'm thinking of Praetor compared to someone like Raze, it's just a bit more inflexible. Probably not going to play any mages bot. Probably not going to play things that aren't hyper carries, but there's still probably going to be a strong bot lane. Yeah.
They've also got Vixbit as a sub support. I am not sure. I think it was on Gravitas earlier, right? It was a bit of a surprising pickup for me because I don't think he really, to be honest, I don't think he was that good. And they've also got Coach Felixis, who I think was with them last year as well. So they've sort of retained some core members in Zoranus and Poltron, who I both think did pretty decent. I think Poltron especially was a lot more influential than we were both expecting. So it'll be interesting to see if he can pull it off again with a new bot side. Next up, we have Ground Zero Gaming, new entrants. We got Tron and Toppy in the top lane, Gooby and Jungle, who returned from quitting League. So that was interesting. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but
Memphis, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Memphis, yeah, in the mid lane. Dante and Bulldog in bot lane with LEG as a support as well, or as a sub support.
Well, I think Dante and Bulldog had quite a lot of success last year. I think those are probably going to be the best players on the team. I think for the rest of them, it seems, I'm not like a huge fan. I think Gooby has really big champion pool problems, and also the only path he knows is full clear into full clear. So personally, not the kind of jungler I like playing with, but he can carry games, I think, if he gets his champs. Memphis, I've only played against a couple times, and I don't know, like he seems fine, so don't really have any complaints there. I think overall this is probably going to be a roster that has like potential to go for mid-tier, but should be, at least until they show otherwise, should be considered below the other mid-tier teams. Would you agree with that?
I think definitely the biggest question mark for me is Memphis. I always thought he was a jungle player, and I don't think he has any competitive experience. So you kind of got, it's a really weird mix. I was surprised to see Dante and Bulldog on this roster. I would have thought they'd be on sort of one with like a better built core, if that makes sense. Because you've got like a couple of rookies, and then in top lane you've got sort of very like a middle of the pack / bottom tier top laners. So it definitely is. It does seem like they put a lot of their investment into the bot lane, and I think it's going to be on those two specifically to sort of carry the rest of the team. But yeah, at the same time, they are question marks, and I'm happy to be proven wrong.
Yeah, I think that point about the bot lane, like maybe wanting to build around a stronger core, I think part of the problem is just ADC at the moment, and at least in OC, is probably the most stacked role. I feel like all the ADCs are pretty strong, like even the ADCs that would be considered lower tier. So obviously, I don't know how it went down, but if, for example, Bulldog really wanted to play with Dante, but the other teams really wanted, ADCs above him before they look to them, I could see that being why they're on a somewhat, I think you would say like they have a weaker team around them than you'd expect. But yeah, like you said, pretty much every year, there's people that surprise us, right? Like last year, I don't think we thought of Poltron as like a top jungler, and he ended up being one, right? So I think there's definitely potential for this roster to punch higher than they seem like they're going to, at least at the start.
Yeah, but they probably won't. But they might.
They might. Next on our list, a team that has made a lot of changes is KANGA.
Yes, indeed. They've got Blue and Paprise in the top lane, followed by Mayfan and Jujo in jungle, Fido staying on his mid lane, and then Hooper and Shinky in the bot lane.
So I think this one, compared to some of the other rosters that you would say would be somewhere in the mid tier, this seems like a pretty strong roster overall. Honestly, this kind of seems like a lot of the players who were, the best or relatively high on their team's performance, right? Like these were players that were the strongest members of their team, basically is what I'm trying to say. And they've kind of built a roster around that. And I like it. I think this is a roster that I'm pretty excited to watch, to be honest. A lot of these players, I think, before last year were relatively unknown, right? Like, I don't think anyone would have said, like, Mayfan, Hooper, Shinky at the start of last year would be really on anyone's list. So those players from last year coming to this team, pretty excited to watch them. Jungle, Jujo as sub. I'm not really sure if... I assume Jujo will get played. I know in solo queue he plays Viego. I can't really remember what else he plays, so honestly don't really know. Don't think he's played competitive before. And top lane I think is really interesting. So Blue is like this up-and-coming carry top laner. He plays stuff like Vlad, Aurelia. He really likes those sort of champs. On the other hand, Paprise played LPL in a long time ago. And he's also played kind of here and there since then. I don't think he's ever just consistently been in the league, but he's played on quite a few teams. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that, because I feel like both top laners are kind of similar in the champs they play. So maybe it's kind of, similar situation of wanting to have them practice against each other, or maybe they just want to see, who does better kind of thing. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Blue play because he's, like you said, a rookie. He hasn't, I don't know. I feel like he's been at the top of, at least like the pro community's list for a while as like someone who deserves a shot at LCO. So I'm glad he's finally got it. And of course, I'm a big Hooper fan. I think he'll do well. I think Shinky, I don't remember what happened to him last year, but as far as I know, they've played together a lot. So I hope they do well. And then you've got Fido sort of as the sort of base of KANGA, who they kept on. I think he played a big part in turning around KANGA from what they were kind of becoming in Split 2 last year, which was a bit of a dumpster fire with all the roster swapping. And yeah, definitely, I feel like this roster overall has like a lot of good pickups. A lot of players who aren't necessarily like the best in their role, but a lot of players that have potential.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely one of the rosters I'm the most excited to see.
Yeah, I agree. Mammoth, as is tradition, have changed their roster quite a bit. So they have Chi-Chi in the top lane, Akano in jungle with District 1 as a sub. In the mid lane, they have Dajung. ADC is Voice, and their support is in Trust. I don't know who that is, but I'm sure he's a great guy.
Yeah, they have an ADC sub called Ree, like Ree. I don't know who that is, and I've never seen that name before. District 1 is a sub for jungle. I think he played like one game for Mammoth last year or something, or like 1 or 2. I don't remember how he did, but this is probably a roster I would be very surprised to be making it out of the bottom 3.
Would you say that this Mammoth roster is stronger than Mammoth's last year's roster? Because I think they are. I think they've upgraded their roster. I just think a lot of other teams have also upgraded their roster.
Right. I feel like with teams like Mammoth, it's so hard to tell because they're just like not consistent at all. Like they vary quite a lot. Like you saw Mammoth last year have like some pretty interesting upsets, right? I think it was like the start of Split 2, they were like kind of on a tear, or maybe Split 1, I'm not sure. I really don't know. I don't really know who Chi-Chi is either.
Yeah, neither.
I haven't played solo queue in too long. So.
Yeah, well, I think Dajung and Voice, I feel like are both at least decent, right? Like I don't really have any problem with those players. And honestly, I think Akano played fine as well. So yeah, I don't know. For me, I don't know who Chi-Chi or Entrust are. They might just be name changed, right? Like they're probably players in solo queue that are called something else. I don't know who they are, but yeah, we'll get a pretty good idea, I think, very early on of how Mammoth is, and hopefully they can find some upsets.
Getting into the big Ps, we got Peace, who have taken a very interesting approach to the offseason, which is taking advantage of the PCS resident rule. And so these players a few of these players aren't on the GCD yet, but we've got Wager in top, Koi or Koli? I don't know. That's a 1. There's a 1 in there somewhere, in jungle. Newly in mid. And then you've got Cheon as ADC, and then their support I think is still TBD. But their top jungle mid are all from, I guess, like the PCS region. I think a couple of them might have some PCS experience, but the other ones have played in like their sort of like collegiate league as well. So they're not complete sort of rookies.
Yeah, it's hard to know what to expect from this team because, well, 1, we don't even know their full roster yet. We don't know who the support is. And 2, we just don't know the players, right? I think this is a team that has potential to be really good. Like, I think Chown's quite good. So have a feeling like he would choose good teammates, right? At the same time, we don't know anything about them, right? So they could come in and be 3 import level players, or they could just come in and not really do any damage. So Peace is another team that I think is just going to be really exciting to watch. Start figuring out, what these players play, how good are they, that sort of stuff. I also wonder if they have any, because like you were saying, some of them have PCS experience. Maybe that'll help them if they ever got to PCS playoffs. They'll kind of know, what teams play certain things. Maybe like, are there any players that are have champion pool deficiencies, just like that extra bit of information that being familiar with a region brings you pretty much.
Oh yeah, I also saw a tweet, obviously like no source or anything, but he was essentially saying that these 3 players are all shit in PCS. So I feel like it's interesting. Like I found that really interesting when I read it, but it's hard to know what that means in the LCO because we don't really know where, like, is shit in PCS, is that top tier in LCO?
Yeah, that could be Oceanic Faker for all we know.
Yeah. So yeah, a roster with a lot of question marks. I don't really know who they're going to pick up for support. I don't really know who's left on the market.
Amelg.
Yeah, I'm coming, baby. Nah, I mean there are a lot of players, retiring and then lying and coming back. So maybe I should do that too.
And last but certainly not least is PGG. So we have Chippy's top, Schönfire jungle, Dongy mid, who is Winterer renamed. Then we have Violet and Appy as your bot lane. Pretty stacked lineup, I have to say.
Yeah, I was very impressed by this. I'm really happy to see Dongy move to mid lane because he originally played mid, I think, in the OCS. And I think overall I don't know. You're the mid laner. What do you think about him?
I feel like I might have a pretty biased view because the one time I versed Winterer mid was when I was playing Lucian versus Galio, which is, it's pretty fucking one-sided, and I went 10-0. And this was, I think it was against Wynot as well, so it was like a little extra. It felt quite good that day, Yeah, I don't know. He was pretty good as a top laner, I feel like. I think I felt like he played better than Topoon in the finals, from what I remember.
Ooh,
so I think he should be, a pretty good mid laner, but at the same time, it's still a bit of a question mark to me. The champ pool obviously is different. Haven't seen him play mid for a while. That being said, he has Schönfire as his jungler, and I think one thing that's real good about Schönfire, at least when I kind of worked with him on Direwolves, was that he has a great understanding of not just his role, but the other roles as well. So if someone's like lacking in terms of like their role, Shern can definitely help them bring kind of, like not coach them, but bring them up to speed, I feel like. He's not going to do everything for you, but he can kind of point you in the right direction. And I think that could be like really, really helpful for pretty much everyone on the team. So yeah, I agree. Winter mid could be pretty exciting, but I mean, the entire rest of the roster is really exciting, right? Like Schönfire coming back from overseas, probably the best OC jungler of all time. Then Chippy's as well as, a few OPL titles to his name and definitely likes to carry tops. And there's also a lot of other carry top players right now, so that's going to be pretty exciting. And then Violet Appy, you'd have to say that's contending for the best spot lane.
I think he supported Violet before too on some other
edition it was
of the Peace roster.
Avant 2020, I think.
Oh, yeah. That checks
It'll
out.
be really exciting to see Violet kind of unleashed again, because I think he kind of had moments of playing well last year, but it felt like his team wasn't really on his level. But I think now he definitely does have that. Also, at this point, I'm pretty ready to crown Appy as like Mr. League of Legends, because I swear that guy can just play whatever champ, whatever role he wants, and he does well. So Appy's he's the, I don't know what you call it, like the secret agent of the team. He can just fill any role, get any job done that you want him to. So yeah, big fan of Appy actually.
Yeah, he's always been at least like upper mid tier in every role he's played. So props to him for sure.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you have all been waiting for, the LCO power rankings. Now, this is for the end of split. I think it could be kind of different for week one, and maybe we'll bring that up. But these will be at least what we think the teams are going to look like at the end of the split. So let's start with the 8th place. Amelga, I have a feeling I know who you're going to say, but why don't you reveal it to the audience?
That's pretty spicy. I've got... Drumroll, please. It is Mammoth. I think they... Like, for the most part, we judge these rosters on paper at the start of the split, right? And these guys... There's not really anything that really sticks out to me. You mentioned earlier that, the jungle mid ADC, Akano, Dajong, and Voice, they're all okay, but there's no real standouts for me. There's no one that is definitely going to be like a top tier in their role kind of player. So it's hard to put them anywhere else.
I agree as well. I think Mammoth will be 8th. That being said, I do think Mammoth's roster is better than their last year one, at least on paper, especially if they can keep it consistent. I mean, that's a big part of it as well. And I think that part of Mammoth being last is that a lot of the other teams have upgraded their rosters too, I feel like. But I would be surprised to see Mammoth with maybe as little wins as they had before. I feel like they're going to do a bit better. I just feel like the kind of gap overall is closed a little bit, but there is still a fairly sizable gap. I think they'll get more wins than they did last year.
Okay, bold prediction. I like that. What have you got in 7th?
In 7th, I have Ground Zero. So yeah, I don't know. It's a roster that I feel like maybe at the end of the year, some of the players will starting to be quite good. you know? But I feel like right now the top side doesn't really have the power they need, and it's kind of up to their bot lane to do all the heavy lifting. That being said, it's a fairly good bot lane, right? Like they might be able to lift them higher than 7th place. And I think there's probably a reasonably big gap between 7th and 8th. And also the kind of gap between those mid-tier teams of like 7th to maybe 4th, I feel like might actually be quite small. Like there could be quite a lot of swapping around there. But I think at least for now, I have Ground Zero at 7th.
I too have Ground Zero at 7th. As much as I hate to put my boys Dante and Bulldog down there, it just, it's mainly the top side for me that doesn't really check out. Like there is a chance that they can hit above their weight, but my money is on most likely not.
Now, for me, at number 6, I put Peace, but I am so unconfident in this that I almost feel like I shouldn't rank them just because, like, I don't know. We just don't know, right? We don't really know anything about their players. They could come in and be the 2nd best team. They could come in and be the 8th team. Like, we just don't really know. So I think putting them at 6th is kind of fair, at least in my mind, because it's like, okay, they're probably better than some of these teams that have lots of unproven talent, because at least this team, they have Cheon, they have some people with competitive experience. You'd think that makes them better than 7th and 8th. But because we don't know anything about their players, it feels too generous to put them anything above that, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even know their 5th member, right? It's very hard to rank them. I also put them as 6th. It does feel like they're kind of like the dividing line between sort of bottom of the ladder and I guess the rest. And saying that, I can see like any of these teams really swapping places. It does feel a lot closer than previous years. Like sort of last year we kind of had a defined sort of bottom 2-3 teams. This time kind of the same story, but not as much, you know.
Okay, so now we're into our top 5, our playoffs.
Ooh.
Who do you have at the bottom of the playoffs?
At the bottom of the playoffs, number 5. This was really hard for me, but I put KANGA.
Okay.
It was between KANGA and BLISS for me for 5th. I could see both of them placing either of them very easily. This is the gap between these two teams is probably the closest for me. I think Hooper's very good. I think Fido's very good. I think the biggest question mark is around Blue and whether or not he'll be able to perform on the LCO stage. Other than that, I could see them hitting as high as like, I don't know, maybe 3rd if they play very well, but most likely 5th for me.
I agree. This is when the teams are starting to get really close and it's hard to tell. But I do think this is where our paths diverge, because I'm going to put BLISS at 5th. Now, I think if we were doing a week 1 power rankings, I'd probably put BLISS at 3rd, but I don't think they're a team that's going to scale as well as some of the other teams. But from what I understand, at least, you know, from what I've heard down the grapevine, they're doing reasonably well in scrims, and I think that they have like reasonable synergy. Again, like you said, Luminous and Benvi have played together. I think why not? And Daystar seem to be working well together. So yeah, I think it's a team that's probably going to do pretty well at the start of the split, but I don't see them going for top 3. But like you said, like the 5th and 4th, I think those are quite close. So I guess it should be no surprise if I have BLISS at 5th that for me, KANGA is 4th. So pretty much for the reasons you were saying as well. I think they're just super solid. The biggest questions are around the top lane. I think Blue is good enough that he's probably just going to, you know, slot in pretty nicely. But again, there could be some growing pains, and it might be more of a split 2 team, right? Rather than a split 1 team. But I do think by the end of the split, they probably will have that worked out. Could depend maybe how long the split is. I actually don't know if we know if it's a full split yet or not. But anyway, hopefully they have the time to work on it. And I think by the end of the split, they will finish above BLISS.
Yeah, and obviously I have BLISS in 4th. I think what you said about Blue is true. I think he has sort of proven his skill just on the solo queue ladder. I think a big thing for me is that like he is a lot more professional on the carry tops than he is on the tanks. And yeah, that's always rough not having that sort of flexibility that you might always want. But for BLISS, I think a lot of it follows on from what you said as well, with sort of, I guess, like the early split buff, given that these players have already kind of played together before, and I know why not, it kind of knows BenV as well. So they're sort of starting, they kind of got like a head start almost. I didn't realize that they were doing well in scrims, but that, you know, that suits my placement as well, so I'll roll with that. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like for me, split 1 is always teams sort of starting their journey, I guess. And they don't really, towards the end of the split, they don't really reach the end of that. They're still sort of developing into the split 2, where we see teams actually start to figure out what their identity actually is. So I feel like BLISS will be able to carry the early game buff through the split. Split 2 might be a different story, but for this split at least, I will happily put them 4th.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that. I will say I actually did manage to spectate one scrim between BLISS and Direwolves because the game was left open spectate. And Direwolves did forfeit at 19 minutes. So based on my one sample size,
oh my God,
BLISS dominated Direwolves. So yeah, who knows where we'll go with that. But yeah, okay, 3rd place, I have Direwolves. I expect you probably do as well. I feel like there is kind of a big gap between 3rd and then the top 2. I think Direwolves, they look like a pretty strong roster, but the ones above them just look so stacked. I would be surprised if I guess I wouldn't be surprised to see Direwolves contest those teams, but I would be surprised to see them consistently come out on top against them.
Yeah, I mean, you stole my placement, but yes, I did also put Direwolves 3rd. Yeah, I mean, we've reached the top 3 now. They're all good teams, right? It's just a matter of where they sort of sit on the pecking order, and it does feel to me that Direwolves are a bit behind the other 2. I would like to see the PGG trio kind of regain some of the early success, but it's been quite a while, right? And you know, you have the storyline of them being the trio, but I don't know how much of that is actually going to translate into this split, especially with a new top side. I feel like that changes the dynamic a lot of the team. Pretty comfortable 3rd for me.
Why don't you hit us with our number 2? What's it going to be?
Number 2. All right, these top 2. It wasn't as hard as I thought. I put PGG as number 2. I do think Dongi will be a good mid laner. I just don't know that for sure yet. Yeah. Whereas on the other unnamed roster,
I feel like you can just talk about them as well. You might as well.
Yeah, okay. Chiefs, they've been sitting in their roles as well, so I put them first. They already have proven success. You know, Raid Aladoric, strongest bot lane, most likely will be the strongest bot lane again. And you've got, it just feels like PGG is that little bit behind. Again, I wouldn't be surprised to see them. Well, I'd be a little bit surprised, but not immensely surprised to see them take first. But for me, like, definitely number 2. I also feel like there are still question marks around the bot lane, because Violet, you know, he is a very good AD carry, but you could say he was let down by his team in split 2, sure, but we don't know if he'll show up again in this split as well. So I feel like we'll find a lot of that out in the first couple of weeks, but for now, number 2.
Well, the only thing I learned from that is why you're called the king of bad takes, because, man, you are so wrong with that. I couldn't quite believe it. So for me, I have Chiefs 2nd and PGG 1st. Now, I do think, again, if it was like week 1 power rankings, I'd probably put Chiefs above PGG. But I think there's a few things of PGG that kind of can't be overlooked. The first thing is the fact that they're planning, I don't know if they have it set up yet because they haven't been playing OC solo queue, but they're planning to have their gaming house in Perth and then I guess play on the Singapore server or whatever, and also scrim against some of those teams. So I think if they have that, that's like a massive advantage. It means that you don't have to play OC solo queue, which is just not as skilled as the other ones. And also you're just able to scrim against better teams. So I think that's really big in my mind. I also think that as a roster, I agree that there are some question marks. Like, is Schoenfire as good as he once was? You know, is Chippy's as good as he once was? How is Dongi as a mid laner? I think by the end of the split, all that will have worked out. I still give the edge to Chiefs in the early split, and they've definitely proven themselves, right? Like, Raze Aladoric, definitely good bot lane. Kasam Biopanther, great solo laners. I think Babip is maybe still a big question mark. I feel like Babip didn't play that well in NA, but also, like, plenty of people didn't play well in NA and then came back and smurfed in host, right? So I feel like that maybe doesn't mean that much. And he was a coach all of last year, so we haven't seen him in a while. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, he's always at least a solid player. But I think across the board, PGG have the higher ceiling, and I expect them to reach that ceiling. Also, they play alpha male League of Legends. You know, they're not waiting around just scaling. You know, that's the kind of team that the game starts at level 1 before minions spawn. There's like 3 people or 3 lanes that really want to get stuff done. Whereas I feel like Chiefs, they're a bit more, very solid team. They kind of sit back, team fight, loser League of Legends, as I might say.
All right, buddy. That's a good point. I didn't actually think about the team styles. And yeah, it's interesting that even though pretty much all of PGG is like the roster is different, their style still feels very much the same, and that they already seem like the type of team that wants to play very aggressive, right, and sort of secure those early leads for themselves instead of waiting for their opponent to make mistakes. So you're right on that, at least. But yeah, Chiefs first for me. I think that it's just a lot of proven talent, and I think BioPanther is kind of going to be the key to unlocking Chiefs. I feel like he's always proven himself to be a solid top laner. He's going to prove it again this split.
Well, I'm just glad you're not an Order shill anymore.
That's true. Fuck Order.
Yeah, they're gone now. And I'm not a Chiefs shill anymore. I mean, I guess I still am, right? Like,
That's
I have
true.
them top
what
2.
happened to you, man?
I mean, I still think they're really good. I just like PGG a bit better, I think I see Chiefs, I'm like, damn, like that's a solid roster. I see PGG, and that gets me excited. I'm like, let's go, baby. I want to see 3 winning lanes. So that kind of gets me going just a bit more. So to recap, number 1, PGG, 2 Chiefs, 3 Direwolves, 4 KANGA, 5 BLISS, 6 was... God, does anyone remember who 6 was? 6 was Peace, 7 was Ground Zero, 8 was Mammoth. Okay, that's what I got. That's it. If you guys want to, if that's what you want to vote for your power rankings as well, I think taking my advice is always great. I don't think I've been wrong before, despite what Amel seems to think.
And I've got Chiefs, PGG, Direwolves, BLISS, KANGA, Peace, Ground Zero, and Mammoth. And this is going to be, spot for spot. This is going to be the correct rankings at the end of the split. Mark my words. I don't know if we should have some sort of bet or wager on this episode. Surely we figure something out.
I was thinking something like, if he wins, I'm forced to watch some like weeb shit, like 1 episode.
Oh,
maybe okay. If you win, I'll watch the first episode of Arcane. And
no, not just the first episode. You gotta watch the whole season. No,
I'm not watching the whole thing. Sorry, I can't stoop to that level. Look, I watched the first one, but I'm not sinking that low. 3 episodes.
What do you want from me?
How long is an episode? 40 minutes that I'm never going to get back of my life. And you want me to commit not 1, but 3. No, you guys are bugging. I'll watch 1. That's as far as I'll go. Now, as for what you'll do for me, I'm not sure. Maybe you have to watch one of Shock's YouTube videos.
Okay. That's about the same length. Let's go with that.
All right.
Like an hour-long YouTube video.
Yeah, I'll make a boring one just for you.
Yeah, make it about your league career.
Oh, wow. Okay, buddy. You're one to talk. All right.
Well, that's it for this episode of the pre-fix. We'll catch you next time for your weekly fix. Fuck, I said fix. Nice. Fuck.